Thank you for remaining with us this morning. Now, the conversation about leadership and accountability in Nigeria has taken a new turn, it would seem. First, that sharp rebuke from the United States, alleging that while ordinary Nigerians tighten their belts, many state governors continue to splurge on luxury government houses and palatial offices. Then came President Tinubu's charge, a call to governors to lead with empathy and restraint. But here's the big question. How are the governors really performing? And how does their lifestyle, or a lack of it, engender public trust in public office? Thanks to the just released 2025 State Performance Index by Phillips Consulting, we now have hard data, not speculation. The reports evaluated about all 36 states, actually, based on both audited financials and citizen feedback. States like Niger, Adamawa, and Abia rose from the bottom to the top, driven by reforms, transparency, and deliberate spending on real needs. That's hard data from that report. Others like FCT, Kano, and Bayelsa, they dropped sharply, often for failing to publish audited accounts for or underinvesting in critical services. Benue, despite being Nigeria's food basket, ranks 35th in capital expenditure, according to the 2025 State Performance Index report by Phillips Consulting. In fact, only 14% of its revenue is internally generated. You believe that? Now, in Kogi, just 7% of residents say they're satisfied with job opportunities. And across most states, 80% of the citizens say they don't know any ongoing government programs in their local government areas. These aren't just figures. They are windows into the silent frustrations of millions of Nigerians. So this morning, we ask the real questions. In a time of hardship, who's leading with purpose? Who's leading with waste? Are state budgets serving the people or simply sustaining the political class? Is the president correct in his assertion or allusion? Is the United States authorized to say what it said? Is there any truth or any fallacy in it? How do we judge from the citizen's perspective whether both parties are right about their governors or not? And how come it seems like we haven't really heard from the governors, particularly the Governors Forum, about those allegations? Conversations this morning we have with three gentlemen joining us. Mr. Enang is a strategic thought leader and an economist. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Ayo.
Also here with us is Kolawole Oluwadare, Deputy Director, Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Morning.
As well as Mr. Yakubu Dati, who is a former Commissioner for Information in Plateau State. He is Chairman, Governing Council, Federal Polytechnic Ileoluji. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much, and good morning, viewers.
Yeah. Let me begin with you, Mr. Oluwadare. Those opinions, I'm sure you've heard them, and it's not the first time. In fact, there's one of your colleagues, I think it's PLSI, also have this kind of a report similar to what Phillips Consulting has done. But what's your take on the president's opinion and the U.S. president, the U.S. government's opinion about the seeming, let me use that term, seeming profligacy of governors?
So why is it seeming? But maybe we'll get to that in a minute. Thank you very much for that. I would say that my opinion, and representing my organization, that is SERAP, would be the reality on ground, the facts. And that would mean that the U.S. government is not far from the mark. And that would also translate that the president would appear to be shifting the blame. The reality on ground today is that most Nigerians perceive the governors have been profligate. It speaks to the level of poverty in Nigeria. And the president really doesn't need the U.S. government to say that before he knows that. And that is why he's the CNC. And that is why he superintends over the governors. And so what the governors are doing, it's not...
Do you think the president superintends over the governors?
Over the country. And that is why it's called the commander-in-chief. And with the nature of federalism we practice, perhaps we call it the type of democracy we practice, the president has a lot of powers to influence the economy.
Influence, but does he have authority over the governors?
But he can set precedent, moral and legal. A very good example, we're talking about public trust here. Has the president declared his assets openly? What does that mean in terms of what governors should do or do that? What about the implementation of the report of the Auditor General? How has the president fared? Why should the governors also do the same? Loans and borrowing. The federal government is borrowing, perhaps the biggest borrower. Why won't the states take a cue from it? And to show you that this is not new, even the World Bank has seen this as a problem. And as far back as 2018, they inaugurated what is called the SIFTAS program, simply to make governors or state governments be more open and accountable to the people, not to the World Bank. And what that program simply means, among other things, is for the state governments to publish information, fiscal information, that includes data, that includes budget performance and the likes, which is not done across most of the states. So the governors have been largely deficient in terms of playing their part in providing leadership in terms of public trust. And that is perhaps because the president has not done enough as well. And that speaks to the infrastructure deficit that we have all over the country. And that's why you see governors who prioritize building big buildings at the expense of building infrastructure that will benefit the people. Talk about education, talk about health, talk about security that the governors, according to what they get security force. And they are called the chief security officer of their state. So again, there is no way you can divorce the president from what is happening at the states, which I must tell you, it's not good.
Okay. Well, let me come to you, Mr. Dati, on this issue, because you have worked with a state governor before, so is there a possibility that there are some things that we are missing in this whole conversation about the perspective concerning governors? The U.S. government came up with that statement about our governors in Nigeria. The president, and this is not the first time the president is calling out the governors. So, some time back when the traditional rulers, I think, visited the president, he told them, look, talk to your governors to make sure that the development drills down. Now, recently, speaking to the Economic Council, National Economic Council, with the vice president, which the vice president chairs, and in his presence, telling the governors to drill down development to the people. Is it possible that there are some things happening that people are not aware of? What's your perspective about that?
Well, thank you very much. To start with, I'm Chairman Federal College, Federal Polytechnic, Ayede, not Ileoluji. To come back to your question, it's very important to also put things in perspectives. First and foremost, the president had made a lot of savings with the reforms that he has introduced into the system, which has resulted in a humongous amount going to the states and local government. For instance, in 2022, the federal allocation was 12.36 trillion naira. In 2023, it was 16.28 trillion, and by 2024, it's 28.78 trillion, a 79% leap. That in itself means that more resources are going to the states and local government areas. And I believe the president already preempted when he mentioned in one of the speech that the governor should wet the ground a little in the states. And I think that should be the focus of the discussion, what the president has said, not what the U.S. is saying, because Nigeria is an independent nation. The U.S. cannot dictate to us what we need to do. And I believe this calls to what the president said. And I think the state governments, most of them are doing quite a lot, some are not. But the areas of focus is to advise that there should be more investment in the area of infrastructure, health, agriculture, education. Those are critical areas that will serve as a buffer, as safety nets to the economic challenges we are facing. The president has done his part
Mr. Dati,
by deploying humongous
second.
resources to the states and local government.
So
it's up to the state governments to take over the challenge of ensuring that it goes down to the grassroots.
Well, just 1 second, Mr. Dati, if you can hear me. I hear you about what you said,
yes,
concerning the U.S., that we're an independent nation and all. I hear you. But the Nigerian listening to you and watching you right now will tell you, don't our public officials take Nigerian money to the U.S. to invest? Don't Nigerian officials, whether or not they include state governments, convert Nigerian naira into dollars to keep in the U.S.? Doesn't the United States government have data about how Nigerian public officials stack money from Nigeria, sources that can be traded into their country? So making these statements, for instance, that the U.S. government has come to make, number one, I don't think it's the first time that they're making that kind of statement. Number two, isn't it in the interest of Nigerians that we know what some of these things are, some of these things are happening, some of these things that are happening? And then you also said that it lines up with what the president said. Doesn't that also confirm that? Doesn't the president confirm what the U.S. has said, and what the U.S. said, confirming what the president said?
Well, what I'm trying to say is that we should take our bearing from what our president, who already made those statements, than trying to recolonize ourselves and look at America as the beacon. Already what we are seeing in America does not show that America is showing good example in terms of democracy. So the point I'm trying to make is we need to appreciate what we have. The president had already made that statement that the governors should look inwards. And I believe that this discussion should look at how to advise and railroad development that should trickle down to the ordinary people at both the local government and
the question about that is, does the governor, just 1 second, Mr. Dati, does the governor who applied for a job, does the governor need to be told what to do? Don't they know that their people need human capital development? Don't they know that they need infrastructure?
And that is why it's important that we discuss and bring those issues to light. Don't forget, just like the other speaker said, we have the SIFTAS, which is the state fiscal responsibility that the World Bank has put in. These are measures that are put in place to guide and direct the governors towards transparency. So we should also begin to look at moving the focus of the governors to areas that have direct bearing on their citizenry, because right now the issue of non-payment of salary is in the past. Because there is so much funding going on to the states, we don't have the issue. In fact, in the immediate past, we had like 36, or rather 26 states that were owing salaries. We don't hear that anymore. We used to have strikes over salaries. We don't hear that anymore. And I believe that this president is, through the Renewed Hope agenda, is giving responsibility. And we live in a federation. We don't live in a system where the president is the headmasters and supervising the governors. The governors are an entity of their own. He has done his own, and we are also advising the governors to do their own, so that development will trickle down to the grassroots, to the ward level, to the polling units. And this can be done through areas of infrastructure development, areas of health, areas of education, areas of agriculture, which is being done. But it needs to trickle down, and that can only be done through the state governments and the local governments, who are being evidently empowered in terms of resources.
I'll still take you up on why you think that the governors are having that difficulty, because why they still have to be told what to do. But let me come to you, Mr. Enan. And I know you have quite a lot of things thought up already. But you know, maybe one place that I want to start. You have had to speak with top leaders, you know, across the length and breadth of the country. It is on the one hand, it is disturbing that the U.S. has to be saying what it said. And Mr. Dati says we shouldn't be looking at what the U.S. said. Well, maybe we can agree on that. But don't forget, we're also talking to and listening to what the World Bank is saying. Aren't we independent enough to be independent of the World Bank as well? I'm just saying. Go ahead.
Well, it's an interesting conversation, and I think the fine lines sit between public trust versus public office and the expectations. And the world of speaking to perception, people tend to weight it off. I mean, if you have a perception index, the tendency is everybody will tell you how did they get it, what did they do. But perception, like some would say, is reality. But however, when you occupy a public office, there is an expectation. The minute Ayo Makinde is pronounced into a certain public office as a role set, I, as a citizen and individual, automatically will kick in with an expectation. That expectation is going to build based on how you act and based on what you say and based on what you do. I will then have a perception. My perception will now be based on that event. People should understand that there's something called a perception ladder. A perception ladder starts just the same way you have a camera. It's an event. So you have a camera, you focus on the subject, and you take a shot of it. The minute you do, it just takes that particular situation. From that situation, you're going to make out some meaningful judgments. You'll act on it, and ultimately it will affect the way you are going to receive or say what you'd say. So when we try to dance around stuff, we are just hiding behind the finger. Whether it's the US, whether it's Canada, whether it's the mother, the father in the village, there's a perception. Now, what that tells you is that there's a challenge with public trust, and how do you build it? So I think rather than having conversations around whether there's legitimacy or legitimacy of one country saying what, it's irrelevant, in my opinion. What we should be focusing on is this what we need to sort out? And yes, we need to. How do we enhance public trust such that public officers know this? And I may add, there's a tendency to always look at the politicians, the public holders, but there are a lot of people that are holding public offices by virtue of their roles, but they are in the private sector. They equally impact on all of this. So
well, they are not the ones on that trial right now.
No, but it adds up.
I get it.
It adds up because I'll tell you, when have you put the bankers into all of this? Where is this? All the money is going. Is it not going to a bank? The governors, they say, okay, they are making the allocations. Are they coming to personal homes? No, they're going through the financial system.
We should have certain parameters that should discourage something. But, the question that I want to ask you, as a kind of follow-up is, and I've asked this question a good number of times, for the president to be saying what he said, and it is not the first time the president is saying it, I repeat that. And it is not, this SERAP, PLSI, and even now, Phillips Consulting, they have come up with all these parameters saying, look, governors need to sit up. The question that I've often asked Mr. Enang is, don't the governors know their job description?
It's a very good question. And you know the answer.
I don't.
First of all, coming from where, the president has access, and part of it is hard facts. He has numbers, he has information, he has intelligence, and then he has a soft part, which is coming from the perception. President has a cook. President has a friend in Akwa Ibom or in Ogun who has access to him and say, Daddy, that whole milieu will have that perception. So he's sitting down and saying, guys, do something. Now, you took this office, and you don't need to blame the governors. You should blame us, the people. We are the problem. Because what do we want? We want a case where every 4 years we are giving handouts. And then we don't scrutinize. We don't inspect what we expect. So anybody can just jump on and then spend the money. Look at the rallies. And it's more make-believe. So show me where a job description is written. What is the role of a public officer? Whether it's a civil servant, a mid-servant, or even an elected public servant, what is the role? Do we know? Do you know the role or the job description of an administrative officer? Do you? So it's all between the context of transparency. and accountability. It's that sense of responsibility that would allow anybody taking on that office to say, I'm here in trust. It's about stewardship. And we wait too late in the pie. You know, all of these conversations, because we didn't build. We didn't build from the scratch. What is our curriculum saying about morals? I got into primary education when we were talking about civics and moral instruction. That was how we were built. I got into the Red Cross. I got into the Boys Brigade. I was a scout. Now, those are institutions that begin to tell you that ID, you need to get up someday and be responsible. And so when I become a governor, I've been built to last. But we have automatic, leadership. And that's not, you can't start, teaching old tricks when I mean, how do you want to make it happen? So it's not about job description. It's about the process of building and who takes on that responsibility. I always say to people, it's not about, you can have a great strategy. You can have a great what, when, why. Ask all the questions, bring it to the table. But the biggest challenge you have is the who, WHO. If you have a wrong who, your best strategies will go down the drain. So let's build a who. Let's look at it and say, what is the fabric? What is expected of a public office holder? Whether governor, whether minister, and what are the do's and don'ts? See, civil service rules are only said when you get into a place, but do they not? How often do they go through the curriculum to say, is this thing still tenable?
I'm going to ask you that question,
Mr. Can I share the job description of a governor?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to ask.
Because Mr. Nyak said perhaps it, and I'm sure you know, Mr. Wakine.
I don't know. I don't know.
Talk about it. It's clear. And it's not a problem of a lack of legal framework that does not prepare these job descriptions. It is there. It is simply because of impunity. For instance, let's look at the Constitution. The Code of Conduct for Public Officers in the 5th schedule to the Constitution. It's very clear. It states clearly what a public officer should not do. I'm talking of morality that Mr. Nyak said. It's also there. It states clearly that a public officer, and public officer means anyone that works in the public sector, whether appointed or elected, should not act in its own best interest or interest that would conflict with that of the Nigerian people. It's very clear. The same thing is repeated in the 7th schedule of the Constitution, the oath of office that everybody takes, whether they are appointed or elected. And that even speaks to all the 3 arms of government and the 3 tiers of government, from president to governor to local government chairman, also from the Senate, from the legislature to the executive and the judiciary. This oath is also very clear about the expectations of a public officer. And there are various other institutions that also mandate it. A good example would be the CCB, that collects the asset declaration forms of public officer, keeps it in its custody, verifies the content, and also should make it available to Nigerians. There is the EFCC that has more of the investigative and prosecutive mandate. There is the ICPC that has more of the educative mandate. So we have structures in place, and they are not supposed to be perfect. What has happened over time is impunity has eroded the functionality of these systems that should be the job description. Nobody gets punished for it, and everybody does what he or she likes. And that's why I gave the example of the moral burden and the legal obligation on the part of the president to set the pace, which gives him that authority, as it were, which of course he has in law already, to mandate the governors to follow suit.
So where is the place of federalism if the president has to mandate the governors?
No, he's talking of leadership.
I'm talking of leadership. That's why he's called the commander-in-chief. So he
is commanding and chiefing the military, the armed forces.
But he has oversight. I will give a very good example. The UBEC Act. We've spoken about the key indices that we should use to judge government, the state governors as part of our structure. We have education, for instance. The state governors are responsible for primary school education. And the UBEC Act makes a provision in Section 11 that says not less than 2% of the consolidated revenue fund shall be set apart for education. That is from the federal government. And that is why UBEC administers that fund, and the state governors provides counterpart funding. What has happened over time, which I think there's a bit of a change last year, in August last year, was that the Nigerian government just earmarked just that 2%. And the law says not less than. If the federal government sees education as very important, it can be 5%. It can be 7%. The monies we're spending on pension for governors, for building houses for the vice president, for security votes for the president, for buying jets, could be funneled into that certain example. So if the president, if the federal government provides just that 2%, Then what we've seen about, and SERAP has taken our advocacy in this regard, is that the state governors really provide their own counterpart funding to access the funds. That is on one part. When you look at health also, the National Health Act, it's also the same thing. Section 11 of the National Health Act also says that not less than 1%. And what the federal government also does is just to provide that minimum 1%. And the federal government wants to convince me that they have health and education as something that is important to them. That does not set that moral authority to make the state to follow, to do what they should do.
Well, Mr. Dati, I'll ask you the same question, particularly because you have worked with a governor before. The reason it's important is for people to know, because most times when you find, as Mr. Enang said earlier, at these rallies, the things we hear from the governors is anything but what is according to their job description, if they know this job description. So do you think elected governors, particularly in this Fourth Republic, know their job description? And do you think they understand fully what, to use Mr. Enang's words again, the people expect of them in public office?
Yes, I think the job description is clear, but also we have to also juxtapose it with reality on the ground. For instance, most people appreciate and the governors, the pressure of being a governor. I'm not trying to hold big excuses for them, but in most of the states, people, the pressure on the governors to attend burial ceremonies, wedding ceremonies, child dedication, is even used as a higher metrics in measuring and rewarding support for governors than even the projects they put on the ground. But that aside, we are already seeing governors that are standing out. For instance, with the hardships that are going across the country, we've seen governors who have provided buses. Governor in Kaduna State has provided buses to ease transportation. Plateau also is providing buses and train to ease transportation. Other states are bringing in fertilizer. In fact, even National Assembly members are bringing in fertilizers. But the focus, like the indices that is in the Revenue Mobilization Fiscal Commission, is to look at those areas that will attract more funding to the Federation usually. For instance, issue of number of beds where part of the indices that are used, number of primary schools. So those are the areas that a focus should be placed on in order to alleviate the challenges that ordinary Nigerians are going through. And right now, that is why we are saying that these governors are already elected, they are protected by the law. So we will make more progress if we begin to show the light. For instance, in some states, you have what you call project delivery result-oriented office. We used to have it when we were at the state under Governor Lalong, which creates a window, a mirror for the states to look at what is being done. How are the people perceiving it? Are we on the right track? So those are internal mechanisms you set as a state governor to help you to remain focused and to see that you reach out to the basic necessities of the people. And we are talking about issues of agriculture, health, provision of good health services, education. So those are areas where I think when there's more focus, it will reduce the pressure on the federal government, which has already provided the enablements and ability to the other federating units to be able to reach out. Because you don't expect the federal government, for instance, to come and start taking care of primary school teachers or building cottage hospitals or health centers. Those are the responsibilities of the states and local government areas. So ours is to begin to create a mirror, and also that is where the NGOs also come in, to begin to shine light on areas that should be of focus, that has direct concern. And of course, it changes.
Yeah, my apologies, Mr. Dati. I've picked on something that you said, and I'm going to ask you, Mr. Enang. He's talked about distractions. Having to attend birthday parties, burial ceremonies, there are distractions. From what Mr. Oluwadare said, I have gone to use AI to check what are the duties and responsibilities of the state governors, and I cannot find attending burials and all of those things in it. But he called them, Mr. Dati has worked with the state governor before, he called those things distractions. And he says that they are significant.
Yeah.
Is that so again, it goes back to whether or not the state governors know their priorities.
You know, I believe that they do know. It's one thing to know, which is the overall, and you must give that benefit of the doubt that someone knows what he or she is going in for. So let's give that as a base. Now, Mr. Dati talked about distractions. Of course, there's pressure. The minute you have an appointment, let's not even talk about a governor. If they appoint you now, SA to a governor, there's pressure.
You mean SA to SERAP alone?
There's pressure. You're going to have your constituency, your immediate constituency. There are, again, going back to what I said, expectations. But I don't think we should get to that construct of saying attending social functions will impact. No, that's not the kind of thing we're talking about, with due respect. What we're saying is that, it speaks to self-leadership. It speaks to what should be done when a public office holder gets into that office. You must know that public trust is an automatic expectation. Now you have to now manage yourself in time to ensure that you deliver the dividends of that office, because it's all connected, the interconnectedness in this whole thing. I know that you're pointing the searchlights on governors. There's a lot of pressure on the governor. And I look at my own governor, for instance, he couched an agenda, the Arise agenda, and he uses that, and everybody tends to follow through. So there's a path of thought leadership, and there's a path where you decide on each element of that delivery, how do I measure how I'm doing? And so you could then decide, I need some execution managers. So within my own cabinet, I'm going to call out some people who will inspect what I expect, and automatically diffuse the pressure, and I can focus on the day-to-day, which is about the thinking, which is about delivering the good things, and then doing one other thing, management by walking around. And that's a major piece that public officers should embrace. Management by walking around or walking about. Go down to the same places and find out what is happening. But that gives you all the feel, and what really the perception is happening on the ground.
And one of the contests we've always had is that of politics over governance and vice versa. And I'd like you to speak to that for a bit, because as Mr. Dati said, those distractions are real. How significant they are for one governor may differ from that of the other. So help us speak to what you would advise, if you could, as a thought leader, what the governors should be looking at in terms of, the balancing act of politics and governance. So the president himself, for instance, have been seriously criticized about concerning his appointments, that there are certain things that you should not play politics with. Electricity shouldn't be one of them. Power, the energy sector, should not be one of them. But it would seem like maybe his hands are tied, I don't know. But the dynamic or the delicate balance of politics and governance.
Ayo, let's be frank with ourselves. Mr. Oluwadare, you know this. We all know it. They are intertwined. If a man gets into an office, he's under pressure to deliver the results. Who do you expect him to go pick? Someone he knows, or someone he doesn't know, or someone in between? So the tendency, if you've ever, when you sit as a leader and as a business leader or a political leader, your natural affinity will be to those you know. And many times over, you can only know as far as you've been able to, you can see and understand. So you bring in people, and remember the human factor, that somebody has said to you, I know this guy can do this, but you've not tested him in that office. He gets in there, he becomes a different monster. Now, coming home to politics, if I choose to pick Oluwadare, people will say, oh, it's because they attended the same school, Baptist Academy. If I choose to pick somebody from Akwa Ibom, say it's because it's his brother. Now, we politicized a lot of things, and even our public office holders do not even mince words. Sometimes they go with impunity. So it's about the behavior. If we truly have governance at the back of our mind, you will see the structure will come alive. It's like the skeleton. The skeleton is a structure. And you see a man my size, we all have skeletons, you know, but it's the meat on top of it that now shows you the flesh that tells you how big this is and how sizable it will be and how much I can take from it. When you build that structure as a governor, the next thing is the process. Within the process, what do I need to do? And being able to measure and know that if people are expecting this from me, I need to go back to them. Look at the last time I was here, I said, we must not dismiss the development is at the local level. So whenever anybody is talking about primary anything, state and locals are the ones to make it happen. How many of the local government chairmen have clear metrics? But they are errands boys when people just want them, Bamisari Shele, do this for me. And then at the end of the day, they are closer to the ground. So politics overrides governance. And people now, perception is, the minute you step into that office, even your driver will be under pressure.
Interesting.
To deliver.
Poor driver. Well, Mr. Luada, there are a couple of comments, but one of them in particular that I want you to speak to. Tola is saying public office holders need to make sacrifices to enable the change happen, sticking to their functions under the laws. The vicious cycle of using our Commonwealth for things outside the Constitution needs to stop. Let's stop hiding under one finger of distractions. But this is the one that I want you to speak to. Festus Akimboye sends the saying. Nigeria, and indeed no independent nation, should face interference in its internal affairs, least of all by powerful countries like the US. Just last week, many UK taxpayers were dismayed to foot the bill for securing the US president, who visited to play golf in Scotland, an act that seemed more self-indulgent than diplomatic. This kind of episode deepens public trust in politicians. When citizens feel neglected and overlooked, when leaders appear to prioritize personal interests over the well-being of ordinary people, confidence in government erodes. So the question then is, we have to build public trust in public office. But how do we do that when it seems like the occupiers are building more public distrust than public trust?
Thank you very much. This is not a new conversation. In fact, I'm having a sense of deja vu that perhaps we've spoken about this here before. It's simple, and there have been many technical ways to look at this, but the simplest way, it appears to me, would be to strengthen institutions. So when we talk about public trust, it is public trust in the office, not public trust in the individual. When there is public trust in the office, the individual that gets there is conformed to the trust that existed before he or she got there. But politics seems to focus on the person, while governance focus on the office. And building institutions, it's rather simple, really. It's a matter of the legal framework that sets up that institution.
Sorry, something that you said now kind of aligns with what Mr. Enang said. You said public office, there is a difference between the public office and the public officer.
Yes,
that's what it sounds like.
The trust rests on the office, not on the person. Because when
governance is on the office,
while politics is on the officer. It's on the person, yes. And
that's why he said they are intertwined.
Yes, but they are intertwined, but of course it means that they are separate. But at a point, they are not parallel lines, they conjoin, but they are different. And that is why to build the institution is to look at the legal framework that operates the institution, that binds whoever comes in there. So for instance, again, I'll go back to this example. The asset disclosure framework, declaration framework, existed before the president, President Tinubu became president. And there is a purpose where that was inserted in the fifth schedule of the Constitution. It means that that provision is more powerful than the president. And so look at the various laws that operate the various institutions we have. They are supposed to be strengthened in adherence and not disparaged. But what has happened over time is that we prioritize the individual. So it means for people from the present ethnic stock of a political party now, the president can do no wrong. And when you look at things from the president can do no wrong, it means the office can do no wrong. It becomes problematic. So to strengthen public trust is to strengthen institutions. And to strengthen institutions is to strengthen the legal frameworks, not in the way they've been phrased, but more in the way they've been observed.
And not just observed, but implemented, enforced.
That's what I mean.
But that is probably what doesn't happen.
And that's why I'm giving. This example is very dear to me. I use this, I talk about it a lot. That is the asset declaration framework. Because we went to court against the CCB, pointing the attention of the CCB to the provisions of the fee schedule that says that the job of the CCB is to receive the asset declaration forms, 1, keep them, 2, 3, verify them, and 4, make it available to the public on such terms as an act of the National Assembly shall provide. And don't forget, that is 1999 Constitution. The National Assembly now made the Freedom of Information Act in 2011. That applies to all public information. We went to court against the CCB. Unfortunately, we lost at the first court, at the Federal Court. Now we are at the Court of Appeal. And you would find it hard that a public institution that has this kind of disclosure that is meant to prevent corruption and promote governance wants to keep it to itself. That's problematic. That erodes the power of the CCB. It affects public trust in the CCB, and it also affects public trust in the individuals that occupy the various offices in Nigeria, from the president to the local government chairman.
Well, Mr. Dati, I have a question to ask you, but this comment from Charles Bolahon Olojede says, attending events is an identified role of a leader. It is part of his figurehead role in management. When the MD attends the wedding ceremony of his driver, it is not part of it is not because of jollof rice. The figurehead role is not an excuse for handling the other roles poorly. I don't know if this answers, if Charles has successfully answered that question, but the question that I want to ask you borders on history. As we round off this segment of the conversation, there are those who say that the origin of corruption or corrupt tendencies dates back into the 70s, when the era of super PAMSEX, the civil service, was jaundiced by one action of the federal government of the day. That if that could happen to a civil servant who had donated all of his life to serving government or serving the people through public office, that they don't know what is going to happen to them if they also suddenly get that kind of notice. And consequently, anyone, be it politician or civil servant, once they find themselves, they just want to insulate themselves ahead. What is your take on that as a kind of excuse for lining pockets?
Well, thank you, Ayo. I think most importantly at this point is to strengthen our leadership recruitment process. Such that we'll be able to attract the best in our midst. And that can only come about if we begin to allow the federating arms of government to operate. For instance, the outstanding judgment, Supreme Court judgment on the autonomy of local government is very key in ensuring that we attract the right kinds of people to governance. On the average, the local governments are receiving about 500 million to 1 billion a year. Now, if that is allowed to go to the local government, you find that people like Mr. Enang will be attracted to go to Akwa Ibom and even contest and add value to local government administration, or Mr. Oluwadari to also come and give service to the people. So most importantly is that as our democracy grows, what we have to look at is the recruitment process. How credible is it? And then the other federation units that should function. By the time you devote and divorce more powers to the local government, you attract more quality people, people who have a vision to be able to come and serve. So that is also very key and important. But most importantly also is that we all have a role to play. Like Mr. Anang said, it's not just about the governors or the president, even us as individuals. What are we doing? What value, what kind of advice are you giving?
Yeah, you made a valid point, Mr. Dati. But right now we're talking about the governors that collect a whole lot of money. While you were speaking, Mr. Enang was agreeing with you surreptitiously, but I can guarantee that Mr. Oluwadare is absolutely is a naysayer to what you said. Help us close this out. What should we be looking at? The president made that statement that he's not made it for the first time, and I don't know if he's not going to make it again. Today, Oyo State is commissioning the SAPZ, part of its own, contribution to the whole agricultural revolution thing. If the governors were to respond, because I haven't heard them respond, both to the allegation of the U.S. and the statement of the president, as well as the Phillips Consulting reports, what do you think should be their response?
I think the response should not come by way of sending the usual, attack dogs to go wade off. We've been living on the defensive wall forever. I think it's about taking a responsible approach to leadership by changing the game, being a lot more transparent, being a lot more accountable, and that comes from two legs. Formal open disclosure, creating the dialogue and allowing people the opportunity to ask questions, but they will ask when you publish. So take it upon yourself that I have received this amount of money, and this amount of money we've generated, this is how we have expended it. I owe it to you that every month, on the 10th day of the next month, I am going to publish across the media what we've done with it, and that automatically cascades from the micro or the nano all the way up. And that way, public trust, people can now start saying, oh, okay, he's telling us this, he's telling us that, we can see it, and he's doing. That is the only way you can, really engender that trust you're looking for. Okay. And it just starts from there. And I think it's really around transparency and accountability.
Essentially, what you have said is governors, state governments should communicate more.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Dr. Enang is a strategic thought leader and a trained economist. We also had Kola Oluwadare, who is a lawyer and deputy director of SERAP. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And we have also had Mr. Yakubu Dati, who is a former commissioner for information in Plateau State. He's also chairman governing council, Federal Polytechnic Ayede in Oyo State. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right. So that is public office versus public trust. If you need to, go back and take a look at this conversation. In the meantime, we'll take a short break and let's have a conversation next about empowering lifestyles through instant access and peace of mind. Stay with us.